the waiting room.
Okay, yeah, so we are recording at this point, everyone.
And we're going to make this available on our website because I know that some families weren't able to join this time. So again, if you aren't comfortable with your face being in the video, then please just turn off your camera. And if you're new to Zoom and you don't know how to do that, because we were using Google Meet mostly, there's in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, if you hover your cursor there, you should see something called Stop Video. That's a camera. And you can click that and it will turn your video off. Why don't you practice that? Just click the video off, and then if you want, click it back on. So we know that you're at least comfortable with some of these Zoom tools that you will be using this year. Okay? So some of the other basic features that we would like to point out when you're using Zoom, and everybody will be using Zoom for your afternoon classes every day. But you're the special group of students who will be using Zoom as you, as you Zoom into your morning classes while your classmates are attending the live sessions. And we're going to talk a lot about that during this session because that's something that's brand new for all of us. So a couple of the other features, do you see the microphone button down by the camera, the stop video? There's also a mute button. Why don't you practice turning that off and on just so you can figure out how to use the mute and unmute. If you want to say hello when you do it, that's fine. We'll get some echo in there.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Okay, and now I've used a feature that allows me to mute everybody. And at this point now you should not be able to unmute your microphone because at this point I took control of it as the host of the meeting. So the protocol that we're going to be using obviously when we're using Zoom is that you have your microphone off unless you have a question. But we are going to require that while you're in school, you must have your video on. Last year, it was optional, but this year we learned we really need the camera on. You might notice that Mr. Walters' background looks a little different from mine. I'm in my office, and he's just down the hall in his office. But he did something special. He created a background. There are some backgrounds that you can use that come with Zoom. And I'm going to see if I can do it while I'm still talking to you. I'm still exploring this as well. But there are some background things under settings. And you have to do it, maybe you have to do it before you get on. Mr. Walters, do you know more about this than I do? I know there's a settings tab.
Sure. What I usually do is I set it up prior to joining a meeting. And there's many to choose from. You can even create your own. But really what you do is before you join a meeting and when you enter your own Zoom, you can look at the virtual backgrounds that are already created by Zoom or input your own like I did. Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Doe.
Thank you. I just noticed that. It looks like some people are already playing around with the possibilities of different backgrounds. And it's okay to use backgrounds that aren't distracting. So we want to make sure it's a solid or a background that stays in the background and stays put during the class. So why don't we just go through, we have a little bit of a presentation that was sent out a while back, but I want to just review some of that. So I'm going to use a function called share screen, and I'm going to share with you as soon as I can find it.
And when you're doing that, Mr. Doak, I just want to add, some of the students are more comfortable with Zoom than even I am. So you can certainly, now that I see a comment here, you can automatize it during the call. So next to right where stop video is at the bottom, and you click on that little up arrow, you can choose virtual backgrounds and select it there. So that's new to me. I've always had it set up ahead of time, but you can definitely set it up during the Zoom meet and choose a virtual background.
Right. All right.
And unfortunately, a couple of students are still having trouble with the audio hearing us. So I did type in, try to log out, log back in.
Right. Can you still hear me, Mr. Walters? So one of the things you'll notice, the person who's talking has a yellow outline around their box. So that's something else you can see. All right, I'm trying to share my screen, Mr. Walters, with the document. Let's see if this is going to work for me. It says I'm screen sharing. Can you see the Weston Middle School 2020 reopening? Can you see my screen? Mr. Walters, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the Weston Middle School 2020 reopening? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit on my screen. So this was already sent out to you. You may have already seen it. But basically, this schedule just shows you that overall, we're starting the first day of school where the blue cohort attends the morning sessions. Now, even if you're voluntary distance learning, you're still in either the blue or gold cohort. So if your last name begins with the letter A through K, you are in the blue cohort. If your last name begins with the letter L through Z, then you're in the gold cohort. So the first day of school, Tuesday, the blue cohort voluntary distance learners are going to Zoom in for their period 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A classes. Okay. The gold cohort will not have morning classes on that day, but everybody, blue and gold cohort, Zooms in for the afternoon classes. And not only is it the voluntary distance learners who are Zooming in, but your entire class is Zooming in. So blue cohort, gold cohort, and voluntary distance learners of both cohorts will Zoom in for periods 5A, 6A, 7A, and 8A. Now, our PowerSchool parent portal, the portal was open, so you should have access to your schedule. I would ask that you continue to check it. There may be some changes between now and Tuesday morning. Not a lot. We're not anticipating a lot of changes. Sometimes it might just be a room number that changes, which won't necessarily affect you. But we will email you before Tuesday the information on how to find the teacher's Zoom address so you can join. Okay, we're still setting that up, so I don't have that to share with you right now, but it will be very straightforward and very easy for you to find your teacher and click on the link to Zoom in for both the morning sessions and the afternoon sessions. Now, all of you hopefully will either come or your parents will come tomorrow between 1 o'clock and 2:30 to pick up your Chromebooks. All right, those are going to be distributed. We're having a special pickup for the voluntary distance learners tomorrow afternoon from 1 to 2:30 on the blacktop behind the middle school and in the recess area. And it's going to be a drive-through pickup. We're going to ask your parents to pull right up to the table. There'll be one table for the blue cohort and another table for the gold cohort. There will be cones set up, and the driver just needs to unroll the window and we'll hand the materials through the car window. We'll have staff members there with face masks and gloves. We would just ask that you put on a face mask as well for the parents. Tell your parents too if they're driving, whoever's driving, to pick up your material. So that's the basic schedule, but we're going to go through and give you some specifics of what your schedules will look like in just a few minutes, because we have some sample 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade schedules for you. Some things you'll notice is that this first period is a little bit longer, this first block. We've done that for a couple of reasons. One reason doesn't really affect you, but we think that it might take parents a little bit longer to drop students off in the morning. They'll have from about 7:10 to 7:45, and we think that it might spill over. So we wanted to pad that first period, knowing that maybe not everybody who's attending in person will get here by 7:45 if there's a big traffic jam out on School Road. But the other reason for having that a little bit longer does affect you as the voluntary distance learners, because we're going to be doing more announcements during that period, obviously the morning show, and we will also have some activities really working around just the social emotional work that we've been doing, checking in on the mood meter, seeing how you're feeling, you know, what are you looking forward to, what makes you nervous, that type of stuff. Let me keep going. And Mr. Walters, that never happened to me before. I accidentally must have hit a button and I put some blue marks all over my screen.
Yeah, and Mr. Doak, when you were speaking, we had a couple great questions in the chat. 2 questions. One was, is it mandatory to pick up your Chromebook tomorrow? The other is, I have my own computer. Is that okay?
Well, it's okay, but we're a one-to-one school and we do provide the device for everybody. So we would like you to have it. It's also important because at some point you may decide to come back to the in-person classes, or if we're fully back in, the voluntary distance learning option may go away, because that's why the state actually refers to voluntary distance learning as temporary remote learning, because if sometime during the school year and we're able to maybe get a vaccine for COVID-19 and we can lift all of the restrictions about mask wearing and social distancing, then we would return fully to normal and everybody would need a device. So I would strongly encourage you to pick up the device if at all possible. If it's not possible and you have your own device to start, that's fine, but we should still make arrangements. I would ask you to maybe contact your school counselor to make arrangements so that you eventually do get your device. Also, there may be some materials that teachers are putting with the Chromebooks, such as textbooks, that you might need access to. So it's a good idea to still come through that process. I highly encourage everybody on voluntary distance learning to come tomorrow. So a few other things before we go in. So that's the extended first period or homeroom. Even when it's not first period, even period 5, when it's first period, is still going to be extended. So that's almost like having a second homeroom in a way. But normally we refer to your period 1 class as your homeroom. We will be offering many of our clubs, although probably not all this year. We're still working on that. We usually solidify our co-curricular activities during the month of September. So by the end of the month, we should have a full schedule of what is available this year and what makes sense, given the fact that all of our clubs will meet virtually. So at the middle school, even if you're a voluntary distance learner, you're still welcome and encouraged to participate in some of the clubs. Just understand that they will be done online. So if you want to still participate, for example, in the morning show, once Mr. Grace gets that up and running and open for students. Counselors will also still be available to you. You can email them. A lot of the groups that they run, they will be doing virtually, so you can still participate in that as well. As part of your schedule, some of you may see some academic support that you might have had already, or if you're new to the middle school, we have classes such as Math Lab, Math Advantage, Reading Advantage, Writing Advantage, OST, which is a class that really helps you stay organized. It teaches you some executive functioning skills, which are like time management and how to prioritize. and how to organize yourself. So there's a whole bunch of academic support that is still available to you. We also have, like I said at the beginning, we have some new distance learning student expectations. It's not going to be like it was in the spring when we were letting students leave their cameras off. So when you are participating in a class, you do need to have your camera on. You're going to log in on time via Zoom. I would recommend that you log in maybe a minute or two early, especially when it's a class that is a morning class, because your teachers are brand new at this. We've never asked them to teach a classroom of students. While it may be fewer live students, they're spread out wall to wall in the classroom. And that's a huge space to monitor of the in-class students, as well as trying to monitor the students who are participating through the voluntary distance learning. So we are asking your patience and your understanding, because we know that it might not be possible right away to be completely interactive on those morning classes. We've talked as a faculty about some ideas that we have. Maybe some of your teachers might ask one of the students participating in class to be a co-host, like Mr. Walters is right now for me. That way he can monitor the chat while I'm showing my screen, because right now I can't see the chat. That's one thing that goes away. When I'm presenting my screen, I can't see the chat. And I can only see myself and 3 other participants right now, because I'm projecting something. So that's one of the challenges of this format. But we're working on it, and we're trying to make this program as interactive as possible. It may not be there next week, but as we get more experience and learn more tricks, we'll try to make these morning classes as interactive as possible for you.
So to touch upon a couple of questions, Mr. Doe. One question was, what if your camera doesn't work? So I mean, that's something we'd like to
know
about right away.
Yeah, make sure your camera works. You need to get it fixed. Use one of our devices. But you know, it's going to have to happen. If it does happen, it should be rare. And then you might have to use the chat feature, because it really is the teacher's only way of knowing if you're truly there. You know, we've all been on, well, Mr. Walters and I have been on many, many Zoom meetings. And it's, you know, once you turn your camera off and you're muted, you know, you can go in the next room, you can be on a computer doing whatever, and there's no way the teacher can monitor you. So that's why it's so important that you have your camera on. I'm seeing some great backgrounds there. Those are the backgrounds that are available in Zoom. I don't know if everybody can see. Who do we have there showing the backgrounds? I can't see the name.
Yeah, I'm on your view. Just a couple other points that a few of you brought up in regards to, you know, raising your hand or asking questions in the chat. You know, early on, the teachers are going to get a hang of this, and you'll be observing the class. But as we move along, I'm hoping we get to the point where you can ask specific questions, whether it's typing them in the chat or asking aloud so the teacher can hear you. We also have the reactions as well as a choice. But, you know, that will come as we move along. To start, the teacher will kind of have it set up so you can fully view the lesson. And we're hoping to get to the point where you can ask questions directly during the live session.
What we don't want you to do, though, is play around too much with some of the filters and the other things that are going to be distracting.
Right.
So having a solid background and keeping that background going the same is helpful for everybody. And remember, these guidelines are not just for you when you're participating in those morning in-person classes via distance learning, but these also apply to everyone, all our students in the afternoon, because like I said, I'll keep repeating this, everybody participates virtually distance learning in the afternoon.
Right. And in regards to when you're viewing the lesson live, we have ordered microphones that help with the audio. And the question was, will we be able to hear the other students if they ask a question or just the teacher? I know a lot of the times the teachers rephrase the question that a child may ask and answer it, but I'm hoping the mic does pick up the students when they, raise their hand in the classroom and ask a question. It's a little bit more challenging with the masks on at the time, but we will do our best.
That's the purpose of those microphones that we've ordered for the classrooms. So again, we anticipate that, we're going to continue to improve and get better with the tools and the strategies as we move forward. So it is going to be important that you share. You can share with your counselor if you're having any issues, any problems, any difficulties. That will help us get better as well. Just so you know, for the in-person students, and should you come back to school, there are safety protocols in place. The building does look different. I think you should have received a video from me yesterday, and then this morning I sent to parents that video as well as some other documents that will help with the schedule. But in that video, you can see that the middle school looks a little different. We're all wearing masks unless I'm in my own office with the door closed. I have my mask on. It's sometimes hard to see everybody when we're all in the building wearing masks, but I think you can still hear me fairly well, can't you? Even if I'm speaking through my mask? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Thanks, Mr. Walters. We do have places for the in-person students to have mask breaks under teacher supervision, but we really are holding to that 6-foot distance. That's why we can't have people congregate, and we have hand sanitizer in each of the classrooms, in the hallways, in certain locations, but we're also asking people to make sure if they do use the bathroom to wash their hands frequently throughout the day. Okay, so again, most of this really applies to the students who are participating in the in-person. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but just know that there are specific procedures that we'll ask you to follow should you decide to come back and participate in the hybrid with the live in-person classes. We are asking you to please commit. We've asked your parents to commit to the month of September, if at all possible, because it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us to prepare for classes and make sure that there's chairs in the classrooms. Whereas we said earlier that the in-person classes, for the most part, we've got students staying in the same room for their academic classes, but there are some exceptions to that in a few situations. So this is where it starts to get a little confusing, and it's important that you understand what the September schedule looks like. So we've planned through September, working on the assumption that if we stay in the same model, we'll do a similar schedule for October and send that out in a few weeks. But we are just alternating. Once school starts, it's blue cohort one morning, gold cohort the next morning. And those classes that are taught, like the periods 1 through 4 that we saw, it's periods 1 through 4A for the blue cohort, and then periods 1 through 4A for the gold cohort. So some parents and students are asking, well, what am I supposed to do on the morning when my cohort is not participating in the in-person classes, whether that's via voluntary distance learning or whether they're in-person attendees? Well, obviously that first morning is not going to be much for you to do unless your teacher has posted something on Google Classroom. Because basically what we're doing is teaching a class here and then providing students with work that will be ongoing. And so that first morning you may be pretty light on assignments, but after that you should have some ongoing assignments that you can work on the morning, the day that your cohort is, I guess we could say, off for the morning. But remember, everybody logs on every afternoon. That's important for me to say. So and there's just a couple days that we don't have school. Obviously, Monday is Labor Day, so there's no school. We're starting school on Tuesday the 8th with the blue cohort coming in the morning, blue and gold cohort logging in the afternoon. Gold cohort logging in the morning classes, and then after a lunch break, logging in for the afternoon classes. So let's look at some sample schedules. Okay, here's a sample 8th grade. And I'll just give you a chance to look at now. Obviously, this is for a student who's on the blue cohort. So it has them coming to school the first day. If you're in the gold cohort, it would just be reversed and you'd have blank here and your schedules would be filled in here. So you notice that 8th grade starts with an academic homeroom class. Then they go to a PFA. Then they go to academic, another academic, and then they go home or log off, and then have some lunch, have a little break, and at 11:55, gold and blue cohort are going to log in on Tuesday. And then you've got this schedule has an academic class, English. This is important. Then there's a quiet study. Well, we're not going to have quiet studies meet. That will be like a free period for you to do some work, take a break. So quiet study doesn't meet when it's an afternoon virtual class. You know, if you were in school, you would attend the quiet study. Like you see on day 3, there's a quiet study, and that student would have a supervised quiet study. Then they have another academic that's Spanish, and in 8th grade, Spanish is an academic, and then they end the day with tech and engineering. Okay, so if you're blue, you log into these morning classes and then log in. So if you're a blue cohort, you have a full day, all 8 periods, with the exception if this is your schedule, you wouldn't have to log in for quiet study. But if you're a gold person, you're free all morning and you log in for the afternoon classes. Just to keep going with this schedule, so a blue cohort person doesn't have anything to log into, but has work assignment now to do. Work either that was assigned in class in person or work that was assigned in the afternoon classes. So there should be plenty of work to do that morning for the blue cohort. And then they just log into their live classes in the afternoon. You'll notice they have their English class again, 2 days in a row. They have a math lab class. They have Spanish and then art. Okay. Are there any questions about an 8th grade schedule from any of the 8th graders? And I think you can unmute yourself. I think I've given you, is that possible? If one of the 8th graders wants to unmute, just to let me know you can, first of all, and let me know if you have a question or if you don't have any questions.
No one asked questions. There's a couple here in the chat as well that I think we should cover, Mr. Doe.
Sure.
And I'll start, let me just scroll up a little bit. So the first one had to do with our trimester rotation. And how do we know which TFAs is for which trimester?
So it's on their Power School schedule, it should indicate that.
Right. And
Plus, if you look at Power School, they'll know, if they look at their daily schedule, it'll tell them what classes they have as
right.
well.
And I've noticed if anyone has the mobile app, which I have, and I pull up one of your schedules, which I'm doing right now, you know, I see a 6th grader here who has 6A Tech and Engineering, and that's part of the rotation, and that child does have it trimester 1. If you go, I know certainly on the desktop site, you can see all 3 trimesters what you have, but again, your schedule.
Oh, I muted you.
So your schedule will simply show what course you have for the first trimester when you look at it. And this is a great question too. Do we Zoom in to our classes every morning or only when our cohort is in school?
That is a good question. And I think the reason that might be confusing is because the middle school and high school are different from what the intermediate and Hurlbut are doing. We at the middle school, you only log in to the morning classes when your cohort is in session. We will send out the morning show via email like we did last spring, but I know that at the lower school, they're having morning meetings as part of their schedule, but their schedules are a little bit different from the way we organize our classes. So at the secondary level, meaning grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you only log in the morning when your cohort is scheduled to attend, blue or gold.
And keep in mind, guys, that on the days in the morning, if you're opposite, so if it's the first day and you're blue, you're logging in, but if you're gold and you are not, it's a good idea to peek at your Google Classrooms to continue any assignments, studying, maybe some homework that you had to finish up. And to follow up on that, Mr. Doak, this is a great question. I was thinking about this actually last night. For students on distance learning, if they have a quiet study in the morning when it's their day, do they log into the quiet study?
So that's a really good question. I don't think they need to, Mr. Walters. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to the team leaders or counselors, but just because quiet study is really a study hall and it's not a support class where the teacher would be supporting you, I think it's best for you to be, working at home on your own, whether it's, on long-term assignments, writing pieces, maybe math practice problems. So I think that's a time for you to not be staring at the screen when clearly most of the students will be working quietly, independently during that time.
Right. That's well said, because there wouldn't be anything gained by logging in to a quiet study, because the staff member who's supervising that quiet study is really just doing that. They're supervising. They're making sure that students are socially distanced, wearing their masks, and working on schoolwork. But they're not teaching. They're not providing any instruction during a quiet study.
Right. And I know a few of you have asked, during the live instruction when you're viewing it, and will you be working on schoolwork then, or do you just watch it and wait until after 2:30 to work on the assignments? But no, you will be working as well. So the teacher may give, say, a 10-minute mini lesson, and then you might have some independent work. Then it might be back to a conversation where the class gives some feedback. So really, it's not like you're going to be staring at your computer listening for the full period. You may have, you'll have your Zoom on, but you may have about 15 minutes to work on something, having your desk set up at home with, the proper materials. And I know this applies, Mr. Doak. That was posted. There was a question about supplies for art. Your art teacher will certainly provide you guidance with that, and share what's appropriate, what you're able to get at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have to remember, and I'll point this out here with this 7th grade sample schedule, the in-person classes, if it's a PFA class, and for those of you who are new to the middle school, those would be like your specials, like we talked about art or PE. Look at the morning classes. Here we have 8 days. How often does this student have a live in-person art class? They don't have it on day 1. They have it on day 2, or day 3, I should say. They don't have it on day 5, and they don't have it on day 7. So it's only once every 8 days that they have a live PFA class, a live art class. The same thing would be true for chorus. It meets once. Whereas the other classes, the academics, will meet twice as frequently during the live sessions. Both academics and PFAs meet more frequently in the afternoon distance learning blocks. So here you see art here on day 1. You see art again on day 5. And we saw it also once up above. So 3 out of the 8 days, the student would have art, which isn't bad. That's one of the nice things about our hybrid model. It comes very close to meeting the same amount of time or times that we would if we were in person, because in person it would meet every other day. Here it's meeting 3 out of the 8 days, once in person and twice distance.
Okay, I'm going to try to get through these questions, everyone. I know some of you actually have the answer already for us, which is very helpful. But Mr. Doak, there's a couple that I think we just need to touch upon. How will we join our Google Classrooms?
So we'll have to send that out to you. We're still developing a very easy spreadsheet. So those of you that were with us last spring, when we went to distance learning, we had a web page, and you could go by grade and find your teacher and click on that teacher's link. And that's how you would go to find your teacher. We're developing a very similar system, and we'll send that out to you before Tuesday.
Okay. And there is, everyone, if you asked about school supplies on our Western PS website for each grade, you will find the school supplies listed. I mean, it is a great idea being home to have it organized with the individual supplies that's recommended by the teachers, although as we know, a lot of it will be done via Google Docs. So that's kind of getting a feel for what you think you may need. I know for writing, I would need a separate notebook for my drafts and all of that. But again, a lot of that you guys do on Google Docs. So it is posted on the website, but being a distance learner, you most likely wouldn't need everything on there. And again, that's something we can, as you join each classroom, you'll get a better feel for, and you could always, reach out to your teacher directly. And a few questions about, how does phys ed work, tech and engineering work? I know tech, they're certainly trying to create programs so you're able to utilize your Chromebook to carry out the assignments.
Yeah, I think the PE is going to be a little more challenging because we're trying to get the students outside as much as possible for physical education, and it only meets live once every 8 days. So, it's going to be hard maybe to zoom into that one if they're going outside and if there's not a strong signal. Your PE teachers will post more information about that, but they're probably going to be encouraging you to get outside and do some activities in the fresh air whenever possible. And
I still have some recommendations and suggestions for some of the physical activity. And this is fantastic. So if you got kicked out of a live meet because your Wi-Fi went down, will I be able to rejoin the class without the teacher letting us in?
You know what? I'm still fairly new to Zoom, and I think you have to keep getting admitted. If you leave, I think you have to get readmitted.
And I know, early on, we're not going to, we're not going to hold that against you for attendance, obviously, especially early on. So if there's any issue with that, we will work with the teachers and come up with a strategy. Perhaps their volume's on a little bit because I can hear on mine every time someone tries to get back in. So if you get knocked out and try to get back in, the teacher will hear that hopefully and quickly click accept.
Yeah. Correct. Do we have any more questions there?
Yes, we touched upon the main academic courses. Thank you. School supplies, quizzes. So I'm thinking assessments. How will they be conducted?
Okay. So first, I was going to say, by the way, you don't need to get a gym uniform this year. Even the students that are going to be live, we're not going to have them change into gym uniforms like we normally do. So assessments, it's going to depend. That's going to be something that teachers will talk more about, how we do the assessments. It'll be a variety of different ways, but by and large, what we're trying to shift towards more of as a best practice is having you use your knowledge and skills in a unique and creative way. So less of the traditional tests, the pencil and paper tests, the short answers, the true false, or the multiple choice, for a variety of reasons. I think in some ways, those just really aren't the best ways of demonstrating what you know and what you're able to do. But also it's really hard for us to monitor, testing conditions and testing security when we don't have the students in front of us. So I would expect to see a lot more project-based learning and being assessed on projects that you do, writing that you do, where it's not, it's going to be your own work, your own thinking, your own problem solving, and demonstrations of your own skills.
And Mr. Doak, anyone that has to leave, are we going to post this recording on the website, or will?
Yes. Yeah, we'll post it.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is hit the next couple questions. We'll be caught up there, and then maybe we'll look at a sample grade-specific schedule to see how it works. So in regards to some of the other musics, group guitar, and orchestra, tech, music tech, and even piano lab, the teachers have it planned where you can participate. Obviously, you're not going to be holding a guitar, but a lot of that is basic guitar, concepts. Orchestra, your teachers will be setting up lesson schedules or the performing arts where you can actually Zoom with your band or orchestra teacher.
Yeah, a lot of our classes are going to look different, even for the in-person students. We're not going to be really playing instruments in school. So what was group guitar or group piano is going to look more like a general music class where we talk about musical concepts, but it won't necessarily be a lot of the hands-on that we would normally do if we weren't experiencing a pandemic, where we have to make sure that we're not sharing materials, supplies, and equipment. And whenever we do, we have to wipe them down and disinfect them.
Okay, so I think we covered the majority of the questions so far.
Okay, so we went over the 8th grade schedule, what a sample student would look like. This is, and then we looked at the 7th grade briefly, I think, just to see. It's very similar. The only thing that changes is when the PFA periods are, and the fact that 6th grade, when we come down to 6th grade, if you're new to us, 6th grade has 2 blocks of English language arts. So if you look at this 6th grade student's schedule, you see that they have social studies as their homeroom period 1 class, and then they go to, it would be another academic. This student has math. Then they go to a special, a PFA, and this student has tech and engineering, which for 6th graders is coding. They learn how to do Scratch coding, and that works pretty well via distance learning. Then this student does have a quiet study. So if you are a 6th grader and you're doing voluntary distance learning, you actually have a free period here because you don't attend the quiet study. Then in the afternoon, every student, blue and gold, logs in, remember, every afternoon, and this person has an academic, they have science. Then in 6th grade, world language is a PFA. It meets on an every other day basis. So on 6A, this person has Spanish, whereas the next day, 6B, they log into art. So notice how that changes depending on whether it's an A day or a B day. If it's an academic, it doesn't matter whether it's an A or a B day, because period 5 is always science for this student. It's only the period 3 classes, the period 4 classes, and the period 6 classes that might change based on A or B. The main academics, reading and writing, math and science, and social studies are the same each period, whether it's A or B. Okay? But you notice that they have reading and writing. And in most cases, that's the same teacher, but there's always one section on each team where you have a different reading teacher from a writing teacher. Those two teachers work very closely together. And if you're new to our school, in addition to being on a blue cohort or a gold cohort, you'll also be on one of two teams. So in 6th grade, you might be an innovator or an inventor. In 7th grade, you'll either be an explorer or an adventurer. And in 8th grade, you'll either be a revolutionary or a trailblazer. So you're cohorted by your alphabet, and then we cohort you as much as possible by your team as well at the middle school. And so for the most part, everybody in the academic class is on the same team as well as the same cohort in person. So we also sent out an email this morning. I think it just went out to students' emails as well during this chat, which has a lot of this information, and it also has a blank template, which means a blank schedule where you can type in or print it out and write down your classes so it would look just like this. You just have to base it off of Power School. You have to go into Power School and see, what do I have 1? What is it 1A? What is it 1B? What do I have 2? What is it 2A? What is it 2B? Like I said, if it's an academic class, it'll be the same whether it's A or B. But if it's a special, or if it happens during your grade levels, what we call the ELT block, the extended learning time, those can be different things. You can have quiet study, you could have math lab, you could have reading advantage or learning strategies, or a variety of different things. Project challenges offered during your grade levels ELT block as well.
Just wanted to mention a couple of things came up regarding the live classes again. So when you're zoomed in the morning for, you know, your 3 or 4 periods, it's important to stay on the live session with the volume up so you can hear, even if you go off and you have some time to do some independent work or some reading, writing, whatever it may be, math practice, some research, say for science, social studies. But in the event that the teacher brings things back and, you know, starts up instruction again, that you have to be ready to listen in. Someone did ask, can I ask a question? This is new for the teacher, so early on, it really is, you know, a window into the classroom where you can observe the lessons and hear the questions and answers. But again, we'd love it if we can transition to the point where you guys can ask questions directly to the teachers, or give your own responses to some of the questions, and really just engage in the conversation. To start out, we're going to have it where basically you don't have the ability to ask a direct question during the live session. The teachers will have extra help hours as well, and the great thing is every day in the afternoon you will be you'll be digitally zooming in with the rest of your classmates for that one class. And then Mr. Doak, let's see, when will we get the class codes? I believe that's what the teachers are working on now, setting up.
Yeah, that's what they're working on. Some have started setting them up in terms of the Google Classroom to get on the Google Classrooms. Also, I think we're going to email out to the students, get email notifications with the Google Classroom request to join the classroom by the teacher. We're still finalizing the links so that you can link to each of your teachers' classes. We're still working on that. I wanted to point out something though about these classes, especially the morning classes. Those of you who have been at the middle school may say, well, that's kind of strange. One class ends at 8:40 and the next one starts at 8:40. Normally we have about 4 minutes in between. And we're not doing passing periods in the morning because we don't want the students who are here live to all be out in the hallway. So for the most part, although not always, students are going to stay in the same room and the teachers are going to rotate. There may be some teams where the students do have to rotate and the teachers are going to stay put. So don't be too worried, or you need to expect that there might be a little bit of downtime in between. You know, you may end one class, start the next class, and they're not quite ready for you yet. So just hang on in the waiting room and wait until you're admitted. Because I just wanted to let you know that there may be a couple minutes on either side. This class might end at 8:38, and this one might really start at 8:42. You know, it just depends on how things are going, what team you're on, and what classes you have.
And a question about homework. Some teachers will certainly assign homework. You all have the benefit of, on those days in the morning when you're not Zooming in, to utilize that time as well. Also in the morning, if you have a quiet study and you're not Zooming in, there's a perfect opportunity to focus on some of the homework as well. So you're not, you know, waiting until late in the day to try to knock it all off.
And again, if you're new to Weston Middle School, 6th grader, or a student who's just starting in Weston Public Schools, our teams, the team of teachers, is a team leader for each of those teams I've talked about, 2 per grade. And they're going to manage a team homework calendar. So it's going to be one place where you can look and see what your assignments are for the teachers on your team. All right. Other questions? It's 2:55. We scheduled this to go until 3. So Mr. Walters, I think you did an excellent job. I think we've covered just about everything. Please check the email that was sent out. Don't forget that we have Chromebook and Materials Pickup tomorrow afternoon for our voluntary distance learners. And we'll take more questions before we close out today. I think you can unmute yourselves now. I think I've given you that ability. So if you have a question and feel comfortable asking it, you can do that. And if you can't, if you don't want to do that, then you can always just type it into the chat.
So in regards to picking up your textbooks, when you head in tomorrow around the back of the school, no one's coming inside, but in the recess area, we'll have the cone set up. And when your parent pulls up in the car, we will have your Chromebook and any textbooks that you may need, such as a math textbook, a science book. So we'll have that all set for you.
And so just unroll the the driver just unrolls the driver's window and we'll hand it right to the driver.
And go ahead.
Do you recommend picking up a textbook as well as a Chromebook?
We'll have it for you if the teachers have one for you. Not all of our classes have textbooks, and we do use a lot of online. So whatever the teachers give us to give you, we'll give you.
Okay.
It's more from the teachers' decision about what materials you need for their classes.
Okay.
I have a question. So I was wondering, maybe I just didn't hear it, but when will we get when do we want you all to come to the back?
Oh, that's for your Chromebook pickup? So your parents got an email, and I sent an email also, or my secretary did, to Mrs. Darling, to all of you. The pickup is tomorrow from 1 to 2:30. From 1 to 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, and we just drive around the back of the middle school. We'll have cones, and we'll have people out there to direct you, and your parents, and if you come along, don't even have to get out of your car. It's a drive-through. We'll want you just to. We'll have a sign that says Blue Cohort A through K, and that's where you go if that's your last name. We'll have another sign that says Gold Cohort L through Z, and that's the side that you would drive through to pick up the stuff. We hope it's very efficient. It's similar to how we handed out yearbooks earlier, well, I guess last month, late in August. Okay. Other questions?
I just have a nice recommendation that just came on my mind. Just looking at the schedule, I noticed, for instance, 7th graders on certain days, if you start with that quiet study, you might say, wow, I don't have to start school till 8:40 in the morning if you're not taking, say, like a math lab or a project challenge. My recommendation, which I kind of wish my parents pushed me a little bit more, is to spend some time, even if it's in the morning after you get cleaned up, showered, eat some breakfast, read for enjoyment, which I wish I did a lot more of in middle school, and step outside even for 10, 20 minutes. It's amazing how much better you feel.
So Mr. Walters, that's great advice. And that's what you're talking about. If somebody has a schedule like this, the 7th grader
Yeah.
who starts day 3 with quiet study. Obviously you don't have to zoom in, but it's probably not a good idea to try to sleep in until 8 or 8:30. You want to get on a schedule. You really need to have some structure. I just got an email from Mrs. Ames, and she's telling me that the yearbooks for our VDL students, some people maybe weren't able to pick them up during her pickup, so she has some yearbooks, and we'll have those for you tomorrow also when you pick up Chromebooks and the other materials. If you didn't get your yearbook, we'll have that for you.
Well, in WIS, none of the 5th graders ever got their yearbooks.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Mrs. Falber about, last time I talked to her, the yearbooks hadn't come in yet for her. So I'll reach out to her and see if they are there, and if we can get them for you, at least for those of you that are on the voluntary distance learning. And if we can, I can't make you a promise, but I can tell you that we'll try
All right.
to have those for you.
And yeah, feel free to leave, everyone, if you're all set. Again, if you feel like you missed something, we will post this to the website if you need to jump on and replay any information.
Yeah, thank you all for your participation and your attention and being here. This was great to see so many of you, and I hope you found this helpful. We're looking forward to a great year, no matter what the format.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. Thank you for the kind words.
Mr. Walters, go ahead and stop the recording.
Yep, all right.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at the materials pickup.